You're listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith, and the interview subject coming up for you, the fella prepared for your listening pleasure, is Rick Webster. He's all the way from Perth again. I love talking to artists from Western Australia, and if you've been a long-time listener, you'll know we've had plenty of them on the show. Now, the reason for the conversation is to promote his recently released album called Long Story Short. So let's have a listen to what Rick has to say. Here we go. Calling for our chat. How are you going?
Yeah, good, thanks. How you going?
Very good, mate. Very good. It's been a very interesting day on the roads at very least, actually. I just noticed there's a shit ton of cars coming and going where there normally isn't. But apart from that, I've noticed a general level of lunacy. One of my daughters, my youngest one, tends to go a bit crazy when it's a full moon. But I don't think it's a full moon at the moment.
Time, yeah.
Just sort of noticed.
Yeah, just one of those days. Oh, yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me on the show.
That's fine, mate. That's fine. Yeah, what have you been up to today? Day job, that sort of thing?
Oh, no, actually, to be honest, I don't want to rub it in, but actually today's usually my one day off for the week, which is pretty nice.
Right,
so I've just haven't had much on, but for the rest of the week it's all flat out, unfortunately.
I bet, yeah. How do you balance everything, though? Because obviously you're a musician, and that's the reason for our conversation. But, at the end of the day, as people seem to forget sometimes, musicians have got lives. Which means jobs, mortgage payments, and all the rest of it. As much as we want to.
Yeah, that's it. I know. Well, yeah, I can definitely sympathise with the mortgage payment thing, but it's really hard. It's almost like sometimes you have to kind of put the musician thing aside just for a little bit. You have to kind of convince yourself to do it, and then do some things that you don't really want to do, like a day job or whatever. I do like music teaching, luckily, which is still a little bit of music in there. But so you just kind of do that, and you just sort of get things done to pay the mortgage and be a husband.
I know the feeling, as am I. Yeah, I mean, I've got two kids, and as well as the wife and the dog and the cat and everything else. And I tell you something now. Let me raise this subject with you now, and I'm going to gather your thoughts or obtain your thoughts on this one here. But these days, my eldest is 6, so obviously we've had at least one kid for at least 6 and a bit years. But we're just finding, I'm in my 40s, that we're starting to recognise the disconnect between us and some of our friends that either aren't married or don't have kids. What are your thoughts on that one there? Do you notice that, when it comes to some of your mates that aren't married yet, that are still living the single life and living it up that way?
Oh, yeah.
Is there a different way?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously like you end up in a very very different life position, especially, I think as once you have kids, I don't have any kids yet myself, but, I have friends that have kids and, it's so different, especially in those early years of having children. I imagine, it's a completely different way of life. And, I try and keep up with them a little bit, but, I guess it's two very different directions, for instance, having kids and not having kids. And, you still stay friends and everything, but it is a little bit different. And, I think you're right. You have to kind of put the effort in, I guess, to make sure that you stay close.
Yeah, you do, which usually means doing things like inviting friends that don't have kids to kids' birthday parties, because that's a reason to get together and have a chat. You can always bring out the bottle of Chardonnay after midday, just quietly, not in front of the kids, But they're the opportunities that you get. But most of our friends, on reflection, don't have kids. Which we only sort of thought about recently, and that's not an age gap thing either. They're our age, but they don't have kids yet. Yeah. So, or some of them aren't planning on having kids. But it's one of those interesting things. I always remember when I was growing up, my parents didn't have a lot of friends themselves that used to come over. It was family. My mother came from a big family, so that was the way entertainment was had, if you like, with other people. It was with family, and very rarely did we meet somebody from outside of that sphere. But I guess it's just the tried and tested way that families have gotten by in years gone by. But
that's right.
I like to bring up something a bit left field in my interviews. So there you
go.
No,
that's great. It's very funny you mentioned that, because it was really similar with my family as well. Like my mum's side of the family is huge. It's massive. I think I have so many cousins and so many uncles and aunties and everything. It really was like that when I was growing up. It was just sort of like big family gatherings, and I never really thought about that till much later. And they, my mum and dad, they had their friends and stuff, but I guess they would see them at different times, and it's funny that
Oh, well. Mate, let's talk about this album now, because I have had it on.
Great.
Long story short, is it out yet?
It is out, yes. It just came out probably just over a month ago.
Okay. I'm enjoying it. Probably my favourite thing about it is that, mate, it is beautifully recorded. It's one of those albums. I had to actually, it was a strange experience, actually, because I listened to almost all of my music on an iPhone, on the speakers, that is.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that tells me very clearly whether or not something's been recorded well. Okay, and I use that term broadly, of course, because what other choice have I got? But the reality is, a lot of albums sound absolutely terrible over the iPhone speakers, but that's how people are consuming music these days and watching films. They're watching them over on the iPhone, and that's the audio device as well. Yeah. Your album, though, let me tell you, listening to it in the car, I've got a Jeep, and I was listening to it in the Jeep a few times leading up to our conversation, mate, and it just... I was really taken with how you've managed to get it to sound the way you have. Your guitar playing, I play guitar and bass as well. Okay, so your phrasing is one of the best I've ever heard. So,
thank you. That's such a nice thing to say. Thank you.
Well, the execution of the note, and I talk about this a lot on the podcast series because I think a lot of young musicians listen in, and I like to pick out the guitarist and go, this guy here, and in this case, I'm talking to you, Rick Webster. Rick Webster is a guy to listen to if you want to hear articulate phrasing on an acoustic guitar.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. That's brilliant. I love that's such a nice thing to say because, that's really what I work on a lot. A lot of my playing, not like a huge chunk of my playing is on acoustic guitar, really, and because I love playing acoustic guitar. So even though a lot of the album is electric, I've always been just an acoustic guitar player, really. Yeah,
you can tell. You can definitely tell, and you're the sort of guitarist that, as a bass player, I would love to play with because you don't overcomplicate things, and I can tell that you don't have an ego about your playing either. You're just trying to get the job done. Meaning that, you know where you're headed to, so you'll do the old David Gilmour thing. Just use the minimum amount of notes possible to create as much noise or sound as you can. And I think you whether you do it consciously or subconsciously, that's what I'm hearing as a listener. I'm really...
Oh, definitely. Yeah, thank you. That's, because when it comes to, as a guitar player, it's, as I'm sure you have probably experienced as well, it's really easy to overplay and just kind of put everything out there. And even when you have a short space of time, you can get so caught up in being like, here's everything I do, here's everything I say, here's everything kind of thing in one big hit. So really this time around when I came to record, I tried to just, we recorded all actually pretty much live in the studio apart from, a couple of some of the guitar overdubs and stuff. So I really made sure that I kind of knew what I wanted to get out of each song and that kind of thing. And also, like, I do a lot of like musical theater stuff, and in the orchestra, and I do a lot of pop stuff, and I do a lot of things where really you sort of have that one moment for about 5 seconds to kind of make your mark. And I think that's kind of been such a big influence on my playing in, like, just not coming across too full on. I'm a songwriter, really, so I love to write a nice song and play guitar that goes nicely with that.
One of the things that I noticed was that your guitar playing, and I know this isn't an engineering trick in the studio or with Pro Tools or whatever you're using, everything's even in your playing. Like, you understand what I'm saying? No matter where you are on the fretboard, it seems to come out at virtually the same, well, it's the intended pitch. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. It's the intended pitch. So how have you done that? Because of course, the closer I get to the 12th fret, and probably a lot of the listeners too, you lose that articulate phrasing, but you've kept it. So can you give us any hints or tips on that one? That's
a very, very good question. That's an excellent question. It's a big one. I know exactly what you mean. It's very, you need to, like, you want to be so comfortable in every kind of position that it comes out.
Just clean. Clean, and you can hear it.
Yeah, nice and clean. And I have to say, some of it, playing wise, is really just knowing the position that you're in, knowing what you're kind of going for. I tend to, you always hear those kind of David Gilmour, again, you mentioned David Gilmour, those kind of things that he comes up with where he says he kind of sings his parts and then plays them, that sort of thing. So they sound quite natural. And I have done that quite a lot, somewhat on this album, where I kind of had an idea and I would sing it and then try and, play that idea so it sounds nice, like something singing, which is generally what I go for when I play the guitar. The other thing is basically I just had the luxury of plugging in an amp and putting it on 50 in the studio, putting it on, putting it on 11. So that can really help too. Just having the power of that volume, as well. I guess it's a natural compression when you basically put a tube amp up really loud, and that definitely helps as well. It helps with that kind of singing style that I go for.
Yeah, that's really well put, actually, because it is a bit of a singing style that you've got. But I was just so taken. I typically interview, and a lot of the people listening, I think it's fair to say, love heavy metal, black metal, death metal, extreme metal, this sort of thing. But your sort of music is the way you play. No matter what genre of music you are playing, you can learn a lesson from how you do things. Because
thank you. It's really nice.
Well, so I find it's such a big issue these days with a lot of. It's not about young musicians; it's about emerging musicians who aren't tried and tested or seasoned, as I like to say. And they're playing notes at a million miles an hour. Like a lot of these young shredders that are really influenced by a great band like Rings of Saturn or what have you. But they don't have the phrasing there. They're interested in getting from start to the finish as quickly as they possibly can, instead of focusing on the note. Now, it's got nothing to do with something as ethereal as saying it's about the emotion or the feel. It's just a technical thing about getting the note right. And then you don't have to use as many notes. And it still sounds full.
Yeah, that's right.
It still sounds full.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm just seeing so many of these young guys and girls on YouTube at the moment, and it's that they just need to take a step back and have a listen to somebody like you who's got it, who's what you're doing, and just learning one of your songs or a part of your song and playing along to it.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate you saying all those things.
Yeah, no worries.
Really nice. Yeah. I'm so I think I was really lucky in that I remember I kind of, everyone, when they're a musician, they sort of have these sort of, light bulb kind of moments. And for me, I was playing, because I've done some jazz kind of study in my time.
Nice.
And I was playing with a really great drummer. We were playing, and I'm sort of just trying to get everything out there that I want to play, and I'm just trying to keep up basically as much as I can. And he kind of said to me, he kind of stopped everything and went, "Look, let's just try something. I'm just going to play, and I want you to be 100% sure every note that you play that comes out is in time with my drums, and everything you play it fits, and it's 100%." He's like, "I don't care if you play one note for X amount of time, just do it and see what happens."
Yeah.
And I did it, and it was like I really concentrated, and it was like I played like two notes, and it fit, and it was in time, and it sounded nice. And when it fits, and you feel that straight away. And as soon as I felt that as soon as I felt that all kind of click together, I went, "Oh, that's incredible! That's amazing! That's what all those players." That you hear
they
about,
strive for,
B.B. King and those kind of guys. That's how they get that. That's why it feels so good when those guys play. And that's not to say either that some of the shredders don't have that feel, but they're very conscious of it. They're still conscious of that, of what that is and how to fit in the song and all that kind of stuff. So it's just I was very lucky to have that moment, I think, because that's what I think about pretty much every time I play since that moment, which was admittedly about 10 years ago. So it's just evolved from there, really.
It's a good point you make about shredders, though, because the biggest issue is that putting a million notes inside of a minute will never make you inventive. It just means that you can play quickly and you've got your technique down to the point where you can relatively cleanly hit the note on a fret without it buzzing or ringing or what have you. But it really comes down to focusing on technique and then refining the creative aspect of it. And you're pretty much there, I think, in terms of the soloing. Obviously you follow the notes and then you've got the modes and the like that affect the way scales are formed. But you're probably very technically inclined, mate, but most people aren't. So they're doing things by ear. But if you just sort of learn that, that first, third, fifth, seventh sort of a routine there, and then start structuring solos in such a way where they're harmonically resonant because because you've got an accurate phrasing on the fretboard. You won't need to do that million notes a mile thing. And I'm a big heavy metal fan, but I'm thoroughly over it. My favourite guitarist as a heavy metal guitarist, if you like. I mean, there's your Richie Blackmore's, your Trey Exagtoth from Morbid Angel. One of the great things that Trey does is, of course, he's probably the most inventive death metal guitarist ever. But everything he does is very similar to Jaco Pastorius, the bassist. Now, it's not a naff comparison, this one here, because Jaco was accused of just riffing, playing notes that didn't make sense and didn't fit into a scale. People got reels of his playing and slowed it down. It turns out every note that he was playing was dead on where it needed to be per the scale, per the mode. It was harmonically correct. And that is the same for Trey as well. But they're iconoclasts, these guys. I mean, they're not even, they were, Jaco unfortunately is long gone, but Trey's still here. He's connected to something beyond the ether. This is like a genius level, that sort of thing. But I think closer to Earth, if you don't mind me saying, and just to round out the point, young guitarists or emerging guitarists listening to you, mate, I mean, they can't go wrong. There's a lot of these, Rodrigo and Gabriela style, shredders out there. I get that, and that's a wonderful playing. But if you, just to tie the point up, is anybody out there, listen to what Rick has done on this album here with the way it sounds. It's not studio trickery. This is the way he's playing it. It's just going straight into the console from the amp, as you're saying there, no doubt, and probably 3 or 4... connection points in between, meaning that it's just really you, mate. That's the sound that's coming straight up from your... Are you left-handed or right-handed when you play?
Right-handed, yeah.
Okay, so it's your left hand that's forming the chord. It's your left hand that's doing practically all of the work.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Oh, it's interesting you make that point. It's funny in terms of some of those shredders and stuff. I do really appreciate that music and all that kind of stuff. And the big guy for me just was Eddie, like Van Halen, just because I grew up listening to that stuff, and I think that's where some of my when I do, kind of. So, like, his feel is so good on that stuff, and it's just unbeatable. And same with Clapton. It's very Eric Clapton and Eddie, and they're so similar in the terms of their feel, and I just love that stuff. And Eddie's one of those guys that's just, he's kind of got that feel and can just, blaze it. And, a lot of guys have obviously surpassed Eddie since then, and there's some other really great shredders out there, but it's like he just has that magic little feel in there, which is so cool.
Yeah, Mark Knopfler, Eric Clapton, Alan Holdsworth, Van Halen, Trey Exagtoth. That's pretty much it. And there's a lot of other guys in between. Al Di Meola, for example, Paco de Lucia. Although he could be sloppy at times, Paco, meaning that he was just playing what he's playing, and it's music that's coming somewhere else for him too. Every time I look at Paco, He looks like he's channeling music from somewhere else again, a bit like what I said about Trey.
Yeah.
He's just... I wrote a big blog entry about him. I'm just mesmerised by his playing, but he's probably the one guitarist that I can say, well, if you can do what he can do, you don't need to worry about technique too much.
Because, that's so true, yeah.
It's so beautiful listening to his playing. And again, he's another guy who just got the notes, but, he was never trained formally. It was his dad who taught
really?
him.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
I really dived into it. Yeah, his brother's an excellent flamenco guitarist, possibly as good as Paco, but Paco was so charismatic. He just... Wow,
that's very interesting. I did not know that he was... Yeah, he sounds like he's very, he's really delved into all that stuff, studied it and stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting listening to, McLaughlin and Damiola, the concerts that he did with them. And there's a very famous quote out there. He goes, people think that because he's, by that stage, the early 80s, late 70s, his star was about as high as it would ever get. He was a global superstar of guitar playing. But he said that people think that it's them keeping up with me, and you're wrong. It's me keeping up with them. They're technically schooled, or I'm paraphrasing here, but they're technically schooled, and it's stressful, effectively, I think he was saying, for him to do that. But... he's the Rasquiado, the way he could just master that, with his right hand, and he just, the even way, a bit like you, mate, the even way it just came out of the guitar. It's just, people who don't have an appreciation for the guitar don't understand these things, but I think you and I do. So I listen into it, and I just thank God for, the legacy of the Paco de Lucias and the Jaco Pastorius.
Yeah, I know. And those guys, they're just, as you said, you get those guys that are just, they're born to play music, Jaco and those guys. They're just, they have something else, they're just channeled into it from forever. Probably they're born with it,
Yeah. Hey, just back to your album again. So it was one of those albums I put on because I didn't see Sophie's name in the artwork because you can't see it on the iPhone much these days. But of course, this beautiful female vocal came in, and it really suits what you're doing, mate. By the way, so I think you've both crafted together a wonderful album. But tell me about your relationship with her. Is it a band kind of a setup that you've got with her going on, or?
It is, yeah. So I mean, Sophie's insane. Like as you probably heard on the album, her voice is just it's powerhouse. It's very, I guess, Aretha Franklin kind of soul. She's really like a very, very strong soul singer. And really, we've played a lot of gigs together. We've done a lot of, when I've done cover band gigs, I play with her, and that's where I first kind of heard her sing. I just was playing a gig with her, and I went, whoa, who's this singer? And a lot of the time when I write music, that's where basically I come up with what I'm going to do on an album, really. I hear her sing, because I can't sing at all. I'm pretty terrible. So when I'm thinking about doing an album or, a collection of songs, I hear a vocalist and I go, she would sound amazing on this type of song, or, this person would sound great on this type of song. And when I heard her voice, I thought I would love to make a kind of rocky, almost like Bryan Adams, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers kind of album.
Nice.
With her strong vocal. And that's sort of where it all kind of grew from. And really, I do have it is a bit of a band setup in terms of there's guys, because really the band is only me, Greg who plays drums and Josh who plays bass. So we play together a lot.
Yep.
And so the band was really small. And then with Sophie on board as well, it's just like this tight little four-piece. And when we play gigs, and it just works so well. And so it is pretty much a regular band lineup, yeah.
Nice. Okay. What does Sophie do? Is she normally? I looked at your Facebook page, so of course I can see that you got some pictures of her singing in the band, and then I jumped across to her page because it was a suggestion on your page.
Oh, right, yeah.
That, yeah. But you both are playing in front of, separately and together, pretty big audiences. So, and I know, mate, I will talk about this in a second more detail, but I couldn't have a chat to you without getting you to tell us about all the wonderful awards that you've won. But first, just this relationship here with Sophie. What does she normally do, mate? Is she a bit like you? She's a singing teacher as well. Or can you tell me a bit more about her?
Yeah. So, I mean, she is also a singing teacher, and we both do a lot of cover gigs together, and, just sort of things that pop up, cover gigs, that sort of stuff.
The covers that you were saying before, yeah, gotcha. Yep.
Yeah, and then we both kind of play. Sometimes Sophie will sing with Perth Symphony Orchestra, and sometimes I'll play with Perth Symphony Orchestra. Yeah, and sometimes I'll do gigs for Wazzo, and she'll go gig for, Wazzo or something different like that. So we both kind of do similar stuff that's sometimes together, and similar stuff that's sometimes not together. So it's interesting, yeah. But she's just an incredible singer, really. She's very in demand over here, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that was sort of what I was hoping to get at, was that I saw that picture of her playing with what looked like an orchestra, and then you mentioned it's the Perth Symphony Orchestra. That's a big deal, mate. I mean, you're playing with somebody there that really knows their shit, if you don't mind me saying. It's a lot of people that talk about these things, but then they don't do it. But to see, the vocalist that you're working with there in front of an orchestra pit, that's very impressive. Yeah,
it is, yeah. And it's, because I think that's probably one of the first times I probably met Sophie as well, as playing with Perth Symphony Orchestra, and it's a big deal. Yeah, it's such a big sound, and it can be such a real adrenaline rush, and she handles it perfectly.
Let's talk about these awards then, because Lee's bio that he sent over of yourself, mate. Yeah, it talked about all of the awards, but I'm going to hand it over to you now, mate. You've won a stack of them. So can you tell me what you've won and the reason that you've won them?
Sure. I mean, the biggest one was really the John Lennon songwriting competition.
Yeah.
Which was a few years ago now, but that one was really just, and all those some of those international awards around that time. It was really like I'd kind of just started writing more stuff, really. I just started thinking about releasing more music, and I just didn't really know what I was doing in terms of songwriting. I was sort of writing a song and wondering whether it was good or wondering if people actually like it, or, it's so hard sometimes to get good feedback, honest feedback.
True.
So I sent it off to the John Lennon Songwriting Competition and a few of those others, basically because they offered a song evaluation. So I thought, I'll get the evaluation, see if I'm on the right track. And then when it came back that I won the John Lennon Songwriting Competition in the jazz category, I think it was, and some of those other ones, I was a runner-up and, I was all these different things. And I got the evaluations back and it was all really positive. I thought, wow, that's not what I expected. It just wasn't even on my radar in the slightest. Like, I just really wanted to know if I was on the right track. So I definitely got the answer to that question, which was really great. And it just spurred me on so much to create more music, really, which is, a nice feeling.
Yeah, great. Yeah, but that's not the only award there. I think there's some. Is it a whammy that you've won as well?
I haven't won a whammy, but I've been nominated 3-4 times or so, which is awesome too, because the Wham Awards is such a big deal here, and it's such an awesome organisation. So it's so good to get recognised by them in any way. It's really, really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, the whammies are a big deal, okay, and I've spoken to the vast majority of Australian interview subjects that I've had on the show do come from Perth because of my relationship with Lee and the Firestarter guys there. And look, I say this sincerely, as I said in another podcast. God, people who listen to me regularly are going to get sick of me saying this, but I've found something to like about everything that I've heard from Western Australia. Okay, I've never put something on where I've gone, and to be honest, it's definitely not like this at all. Some of the stuff I get is just not well thought out at all. Okay, and I that's why I make a point of being a fan of just about every genre you can imagine, under every subgenre category you can imagine as well. But good music needs to be a bit like yours. It needs to be appreciated regardless of whether or not you like a genre or not. But the whammies, I think, really encourage Western Australian artists to keep on producing wonderful music, because the reality is you might get nominated and even win an award. And I think, again, I was saying this on another podcast last week, but I felt that there's a lot of disrespect toward winning awards from Australian artists towards the ARIAs during the 90s, and maybe even bled over into the early 2000s a little bit. And I don't think that they were being taken seriously enough from the perspective that the industry is acknowledging it. It's probably the only industry in the world where you'd see that sort of nonchalance toward it. Any other industry, ICT, tech, that sort of thing, Nobel Peace Prize, anything that involves being recognised by your peers or a panel is coveted. But we went through a period in Australia where we think we had a bit of a unique relationship with all of that sort of stuff. But I never caught any of that shade from artists over in Western Australia toward the whammies. So I can only say, Matt, that it must help. And to even be nominated, mate, is a wonderful thing.
Oh, totally. And I mean, like the Whammy Awards are just like, it's a very, I think the great part about it is, it covers such a wide, as you said, like a wide variety of genres. And, it's so easy sometimes, not saying the, other awards are like this, but it would be so easy for an organization like Wham to, be like, okay, we're going to give out a pop award and a folk award and a country award, like whatever's kind of popular at the moment. But it's like, they give, opportunities to jazz artists. Because I used to be quite a heavy jazz artist, and Wham would offer me a slot in the Wham Festival. I played for the Wham Festival, playing in a jazz band.
Nice.
And that's just so awesome. You think about how many organizations, give those opportunities to a jazz group and give other opportunities to a heavy metal group, and then give opportunities to a pop group. And, they cover everything and they support all types of music, which I think is so important, in a music culture, especially somewhere as isolated as Perth can be. It's so important to have that support, to feel like you have some sort of support, and that's where, the Wham Awards really end up, with the song awards and the artist awards as well. They really make it feel like, people are recognised and they are paying attention to what every genre is doing, which is awesome.
Yeah. A band that I really love, one of my favourite bands is actually from Perth, called Intenzo. They do experimental music. You've heard of them or not?
Oh, right. No, I haven't heard of them.
Nice guys. Really nice guys as well. They sent over the CD and everything to me, but they won the experimental category in the whammies, and I think they won it 2 years in a row. I could be wrong, but they definitely won it once. And
yeah, right. I'll check them out. That's interesting. I haven't actually heard of them, but I'll check them out.
Yeah, do, because they illustrate both of our points really well in that all types of music are covered under the whammies. And this is music, it's really quite melodic music on one level, but it's very avant-garde. I mean, it's the sort of thing Brian Eno would be really impressed with.
Yeah.
And I think
cool.
I think like recognizing that sort of music is so important, because that's the sort of music that will never chart, it'll never make the lads a bunch of money, but it'll influence people to create and make music.
Exactly, yeah. And they're the guys that, if they get a little bit of support and have the platform to create it, they're going to keep creating it, and that's going to make more people create, and that's how the culture grows, which is awesome.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, that's a really good point, mate. I think, yeah, and because the whammies, I think we kind of mentioned it, but they're kind of obtainable, far more obtainable than an ARIA or a bloody Grammy or anything. I mean, I can't even watch the Grammy Awards these days. They don't even recognise rock music properly.
Yeah,
they have.
Yeah.
I think, God, I might be mistaken here, but I think Beyonce won the rock category last year.
Oh, really?
I think so. I'd better fact check that. God, don't take me on my word on that one there.
Yeah.
But it was somebody really inappropriate anyway that should never have won it, given the calibre of artists. And if I took every opportunity to interview artists through the week that I was given, I'd be talking to at least two rock artists a night.
Yeah,
okay?
right.
Just to show, because fans love it. Fans are all over it, but the media isn't, and the Grammys and these award shows overseas aren't. And it's really, I love everything. I've got a French House T-shirt, meaning what was the label? Ed Banger T-shirt. I love all types of music, from extreme metal to French house to what you're doing. You don't have to marginalise rock music because of no reason. I mean, I don't know what the reason is, but
yeah.
So
I mean, rock music is just, it still has a really popular following. Like, and the people that follow it are, so dedicated to it still. And it must have something to it if if everyone's still that passionate about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, mate, in terms of promoting this album, what are your plans?
Good. Very good question. Well, I'm probably doing one of the worst things that I can do, which is to go on holiday. I actually just got married at the end of last year, so I'm heading out on our honeymoon with my wife in about 10 days or so. We're just heading over to Europe or so for a few weeks, and then when I get back, it'll be hopefully some shows, more shows in Perth, obviously, and then hopefully we're hoping to take it on the road and hopefully do some shows over east, and just more shows. I think I like, live music is just where it's at for me. I just love doing it, and I love, I actually really love live recordings as well. My previous album before this was completely live, just a live gig. So I think I just would love to just play more live shows and just record live shows and release those live shows. And I'm all about that.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, let me ask you this question then, because I'm big on this one here too with artists. But you're a bit more established in that you've got a rep and all the rest of it. So do you see a lot of value in merchandise, T-shirts, hats?
I do. Yeah, that's a really good question. It's funny. I was actually talking about this with a friend of mine the other day who's not a musician and doesn't really, just I guess your average non-musician music consumer, I guess. And I said to them, like, because I released my album on vinyl and online.
I saw that. Great, yeah.
Yeah, and they were like, they couldn't really. It was a bit of a head scratcher to them why I released it on vinyl. And I said, well, to be honest, like, no one really buys CDs anymore anyway. So if I press it on vinyl, at least it's a little bit more unique. And people buy, even if they don't have a vinyl player, they might buy it because it's
the album cover.
Nice.
It looks
really
nice.
That's what my album is, essentially, a piece of merchandise. And I said I actually almost toyed with the idea of making just keep cups with my logo on it instead, with a download card inside it at my shows.
That'd be awesome.
Because I probably sell more of them. I imagine I probably sell more of them than I would of vinyl. And my friend was like, well, to be honest, I would definitely buy a keep cup, but I probably wouldn't buy a vinyl. And I said, damn, I knew I should have done that.
Here's my pitch then. You just hit on a really good point then with keep cups, and I was going to bring up household items and consumer grade items, okay? So here's what I think. Tea towels. Why the hell is nobody doing them? Because seriously, we're like, you got to think. I mean, like there are some bands like Kiss that put their bloody names on everything, including coffins, but that doesn't count because Kiss are weird. But with you, mate, being you're people are connecting to you on a one-to-one basis, if you like. You're an obtainable musician for people to look up to. Having something like a tea towel, man, that just puts you in every household potentially.
Exactly, yeah, and that sort of stuff. I think that's these days. It's so funny because you say that to people and they kind of laugh and they think it's a joke, but really, when you think about it these days, not that I'm saying there's anything wrong with streamable music or anything like that, but people, they stream music and they listen to it on their phone, and the market's moving towards, people are more likely to buy a piece of merchandise and then listen to the music on their on Spotify or something, which is, it's just different. It's just different to how it was, even probably 10 years ago. So it's sort of that sort of thinking is kind of what's required these days. Yeah.
How old are you, mate, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 35.
Okay, you're about the same age as me. I'm 41. I grew up obviously I saw the movement, not from vinyl. Vinyl was not around it was around when I was a kid, but you didn't buy it. It was just sort of there. Cassette tapes obviously were the thing through the 80s and the early part of the 90s, and then the CD revolution as soon as Discmans became a thing. And mate, I thought it was a wonderful thing when I started to consume music over over downloading in 2003 or so, kind of a late arrival to it really. I had Napster when I was a kid, but then that got removed and all the rest of it. But you couldn't take the music off unless you'd saved it on the 256K hard drive that they had around back in the late 90s. You weren't going to sort of save the music that you downloaded from Napster and be able to use it elsewhere. Is my point. But I thought
that's right.
I thought that I'd never been a massive fan of having stacks of CDs around like I did when I was a kid because, the plastic breaks and blah, blah, blah. Yep. I just thought it was clunky, and I've really embraced digital. Now, I know you mentioned what you said before about streaming and the like, but the opportunity for you as an artist is, so remove streaming, to your point, is you can have music played over in far more places more often, because you can give them a download card and say, download my album, here you go. And you can do something like wrap it in with merch. So I think we're, right. It's I know artists, it's sort of, and you've touched on it too, the model has shifted from selling music as a product, a physical product. So these days you've got to have a strong merch game. You've got to have the live show sorted. But can you think of any other way that an artist can potentially earn money without really selling their soul and the one in a million shot like getting on an ad?
Yeah, of course. I think it's a very good question. I think the merching is definitely such a big one, and the live shows are so important. I think probably more important these days in terms of, because if these days you might not go that often to see a live band, especially. People these days, I don't think go and see live shows as much. So it's become, I think it's a bit more special now to go and see a band than it used to be, in terms of, you just go out on a night out and have drinks and, see the band at the pub or something. I feel like it's more, when you see a band now, it's a band that you want to see. I think which is why I think the live shows are so important now. I could be wrong about that. I could be way off. It's just my opinion. But I also think the other thing is to get the songwriting game strong, as always. I guess that's a tried and true kind of method, but I feel like there's so many opportunities now over the internet to collaborate with artists, to collaborate with a songwriter. You could, same way you can, be signed by a record label, you could write a song and network with people over the world through the internet, have your song recorded by someone over the other side of the world. And it's a way to get your name out there. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do, but it's definitely just another little.
People do it though, don't they? Yeah,
that's right. The new Dido single was written by a guy in Perth, the guy who runs a studio here in Perth.
Shit.
And it's top. It's killing it at the moment. And, I don't know if he hooked that up over the internet or whatever, but, it kind of happened just from running the studio, writing songs, pitching them to people. And you're gone to the kind of, I'm sure they still somewhat exist, but, like everything, the internet's made the world so much smaller, and you can pitch songs to people, and even small artists, big artists. They're always everyone's looking for a good song, So you can really improve your songwriting game by doing that.
That's so true. What I've said this so many times. You only learn as a musician by playing and performing and recording with other people. You definitely don't learn by sitting in a room. In my view, that's my view, of course. But it's just I sat in my room for years as a teenager playing bass and guitar, and the only time I ever started genuinely getting better when I was forced to react on stage in front of people in situations that made me feel uncomfortable. Especially as a young fella in my 20s, early 20s, playing in new metal bands and playing with guitarists that would forget the part or what have you, and they'd end up in a chorus and they're supposed to be going to a bridge or something, and you think, well, I've just got to react.
That's right, yeah. And the adrenaline, fear adrenaline at a gig is a very powerful thing.
So true. I know. When you first gig, you're like, you take it so... You've got to take it seriously. Yeah. That's not the point, but it's, you stress about it big time. But God, at this point, I don't know how many gigs I've done. It's well into it's probably 200 or 300 at this point. And covers, I play covers as well. And if something goes wrong, I just great. We've got a bit of a break until things start going right again. No worries.
Yeah. You sort of have that little. Yeah, you sort of have this little moment where everything goes a bit chaotic, and then it just sort of all snaps back into place. Hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully it does. I've done a lot of turn up and play gigs. AKA session work, where you turn up and you don't know you literally do gigs where you arrive. It's so noisy in the venue because you're playing covers and there's, the doof music going off in the background, and you introduce yourself to people and you can only see them mouthing their name, like Brett or whatever.
Yeah.
And you literally play gigs where you don't know anybody's name that's in the band. People looking at you think you've been together for years, and you're just playing cover songs that you just hope that they're not changed to bridge or a version that, you've learnt the right version. Not the single version as opposed to the album version, that sort of thing.
Oh, I know. I don't know how people. We often talk about this when I've done covers gigs, where I just don't really know how people did cover gigs in like, say, the 80s and 90s and that sort of thing, because you'd probably put everything on a cassette, give someone a cassette, hope they learn it, and then come together and then hope that it works. And it's a big thing.
Let me tell you, I was playing music in the late 90s where we did the equivalent to that, but it was with a CD. And you really, and it wasn't like playing, there wasn't like the Focusrite thing that I've got here now with my Apple Mac, where you could sort of plug it in and you could adjust the volumes and you could sort of boost the bass or guitar or whatever it was. You could stop and rewind very easily like you can with the Apple iTunes player. This was literally, I think you had to plug it in through your 4-track. You used to have remember the 4-tracks? You had to have an auxiliary.
Yeah.
Remember that? You plug it in through an auxiliary cable and then you'd have to sort of stop, rewind. It was kind of similar to now, but it was far more clunky. And you could, because of the audio quality, because I feel audio quality's improved. Even on older stuff, the way it's being remastered. Being a bass player, you could barely hear the bass on some of this shit. But you'd be,
especially when you put a cassette in,
Oh well, you'd be following a bassist who might have known Thin Lizzy's Jailbreak back to front, or Boys Are Back in Town back to front, where all the little, especially as a fingerstyle bass player, I'm not a pick player. I don't like doing it that way. I'm just not as nimble. I prefer fingers. I can sort of get around a bit easier. But there's just things that with a pick sound like they're done with a pick, as of course Phil Lynott did, and if you don't play it exactly the way that he played it, sometimes people give you their stink eye, and it's like, don't hate me, I'm never going to see you again anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Good luck next time. Yeah.
Mate, that's about it. I really want to thank you for the conversation. You've been listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online. My name is Andrew Mackay Smith, and that interview subject was Rick Webster. Thanks so much for listening.